This is As Told by Courtney, Chapter 2. Thank you for coming back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be revealing the law school of my choice. A lot of family and friends have been wondering when I'm going to decide or which school I'm going to choose. And when I say that I have been agonizing over this decision for months, to put it into perspective, it is the middle of April right now. I applied in late December and I've been agonizing over it ever since. But as I said on my first video, this is a decision that's going to completely change my life. This is a decision that's going to have me move to a new city, pursuing a whole new career. It's life-changing, so this is not a decision that you would want to take lightly. Usually I would just flip a coin for anything that I can't make up my mind, but this is one of the things that you should really put a lot of consideration into. One thing that really does plague me, it has plagued me my entire life, is indecision. I have a very hard time making choices, especially when they're so comparable. When they're so comparable, because it could go either way, and I'm completely fine with taking a chance and flipping a coin to see which way you know, fate or destiny or whatever wants me to go. But not this time. This time nobody or nothing could make the decision for me. This was all me. So I'll just start by telling you that I took the LSAT in August, and my pre-law advisor, she advises people to take the LSAT earlier than that. But the problem was I decided that I wanted to go to law school way later than I should have. I was teetering on it. I originally wanted to be a foreign service officer. You don't need a law degree to do that. And I was considering just going straight into the Foreign Service Academy, like if I could pass the exam. But you know, over the summer of 2020, there was a lot that happened that made me reevaluate, you know, what type of country I want to live in and what type of career would be worth my while, especially with all the causes that I am passionate about. There's fur everywhere. Ooh, oh my god. So I decided that I want to go to law school. In early to mid-summer, I started preparing for the LSAT, and I took it the first time on August 29th. It was the LSAT Flax because we are still in a pandemic. They were not able to host a traditional LSAT setting, so I took it at home on the computer, and I did not do well. Okay, I had a goal, I did not reach it, I wasn't even close to reaching it. I think in a later video, I'll talk about what to do with a low LSAT score. But for right now, just know that I did take, the first time I took it, I did not do that well. So I decided that I would take the LSAT again in November. And this is where it gets into dangerous territory, because my pre-law advisor, she said that it would be best if you could submit your applications, but there is so much noise outside. Are you kidding me? Okay, so my advisor, she said that it would be best if you could, well, if I could submit all of my applications by late October, early November, which leaves space for studying for finals and midterms. Unfortunately, because I was so behind on preparing for the LSAT, I was still working on my applications up until winter break, which really dragged out the process for me. Now, over the summer, I had pre-prepared my resume, I pre-prepared my personal statement, but you know, I ended up changing all of it anyway. So I think in my next video, I'll just talk about a way that I wish I had done it, and just talk about, you know, the best way, or at least the best way that I think someone should prepare for going to law school and the things to take into account. So anyway, now I took it again in November, but I did worse than the first time, and I was not going to take it a third time. There are certain rules in the LSAT that say you can only take the LSAT 3 times in 1 year or 7 times in your lifetime, and I figured I'll just throw a line and see what I can get, because the LSAT costs $200 a piece to pay for it. And you know, in hindsight, I could have taken a gap year off if I wasn't where I wanted to be, but I was willing to take the risk and apply anyway. So I ended up applying to 13 different schools. The original list was much longer. I wanted to include a lot of regional schools, so I could have the opportunity to commute. As we know, living expenses are very, very high. And for me, that would be Washington, D.C. schools, Northern Virginia schools. That's what I was looking at originally. But I started to feel very anxious about my low score. So I cast a wider net. And I looked at many schools out of state as well. And then I narrowed it down to 13, a good old baker's dozen. In the end, I got full-on accepted to 5, waitlisted at 6, denied by 1, and I still haven't heard back from the final one. So Howard University, if anyone's watching this, why did it take so long? That's just, now they're completely out of the running at this point, but 13. It was a grueling application process. I was really painstakingly going through my personal statement, making each one of them individualized for each school and why I was attracted to that school and which program and which organizations that I wanted to join. It was a massive overhauling. But I eventually was able to submit everything. And luckily, because of the pandemic, a lot of schools, they ended up dismissing their application fee. So applying to 13 schools did not completely put me out as much as I thought it would, which was actually kind of a blessing that came along with this pandemic, even though for the most part it was pretty bad. But at least I didn't have to pay for all of them. Some schools still did require an application fee, but for the most part they were all waived, which was much appreciated. So the first school that got back to me actually got back to me within 6 days. It was really surprising to me. I just opened my email and there it was, and I was completely unprepared. I thought it would take 2 weeks at least to hear back from anyone, but 6 days. The school that got back to me first was Widener Commonwealth, which is a school in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and they offered me a very, very generous scholarship of $30,000 a year. The second school that got back to me the day after, so 7 days after my application, was New England School of Law in Boston, followed shortly by Suffolk University, which is in Boston, Belmont University, which is in Nashville, Tennessee, and University of Illinois Chicago, John Marshall Law School, which is in Chicago, Illinois. So those are the 5 schools that accepted me. And of the 5, 3 of them offered me scholarship, which was Widener Law, New England School of Law, and UIC John Marshall. And they're actually all very comparable. Now, Widener, although they offered me the largest scholarship, there were some factors that made me not really want to consider the school after that. The important thing to realize is, although financing law school is an important factor in making your decision and deciding if you can even go to law school, it should not be the only factor. And although they offered me the largest scholarship, the school as a whole couldn't really compare to the other schools that I had been accepted to. And the city wasn't really what I was looking for. So although I was very ecstatic to receive that and to have such a speedy reply on my application, the school wasn't really in the running even though I had a large scholarship. That just left for me New England School of Law and University of Illinois Chicago. So I applied to UIC late. I had already heard back from the 4 other schools. I was not looking to make another application, but they sent me this package in the mail, and it was a really nice package. And my mother was like, please apply there. My sister goes to that school, so I guess they just, threw me a line and decided why not get the second sister, right? So I just like, what the heck, they waived the application fee, I'll just go ahead and apply. And I ended up getting in with a 50% scholarship. So because UIC is a public law school, I would have to pay out-of-state tuition. So that leaves me on the hook for about $22,000 to $23,000 a year, because if the total is $45,000, divide that in half, that's about $22,000 to $23,000 a year, plus living expenses. Now, New England Law, they are a private school, and they offered me $20,000 a year. So it was just about even, because the cost of attendance is the same. New England was about $2,000 less than UIC, but that's not really anything to, you know, shake a canteen at. It's still a good deal, and the schools were both very comparable. This is when the decision-making process got difficult for me. It was easy to whittle down schools, of course, deciding if I wanted to wait to see if I got accepted to any of my waitlisted schools, but I decided no, I'm not going to take a gamble on that, because it's better to have a bird in the hand than trying to catch one from the bush. You know, you should count what you already have. And so I was only counting really the schools that readily accepted me. And then from there I whittled it down to the schools that offered me a scholarship, and then from there I went to the best option for me. This is where it got really difficult. So I had actually never been to Boston before, and I feel like moving to a new city sight unseen can cause a lot of issues, especially if you were not prepared for what the lifestyle is like, what the culture is like in the city. So my family, my dad, my mother, my brother and I, we drove up to Boston for a weekend a couple weeks ago, just to look around and see what we can see and get a feel for the city. Now, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, New England Law School is not hosting any sort of guided tours or information sessions or admitted students day programs in person. There were plenty of online resources and a lot of online meetings and events, but it's really not the same as going in person and just seeing what the city is like, especially if you had never been there like me. So that was the reason that we decided to just go up there anyway. And even though we couldn't go into the school, we did scope out the building and see where it is. How close was it to public transportation? And we looked around the neighborhoods and we looked up how much the average rent would cost, if I would need a roommate, which places accept pets, how long my commute would be, things that factor into the quality of life that I would have moving to a city like that. And for the most part, it was a very pleasant experience. The city was incredibly clean. It was amazing, the lack of litter, which is, it may seem like a small thing, but because Boston is such a popular city, it's one of the well-known cities on the East Coast, it's a big economic center, big historical center, you would figure there might be like a bit of trash here and there, but it was very clean, it was very beautiful, it was very neat, everything was where it was supposed to be. Even the construction, it wasn't as obstructive as it is here in the DMV. As we know, that construction will just completely wreck your entire commute, it would wreck your day, it's so noisy. But over there in Boston, it didn't even faze me. Like, the city was probably the most aesthetically pleasing city I've been to on the East Coast. And that's really saying something. It's a nice city. The food was great, the people were very nice. And our hotel was actually in the Chinatown, so we got to see a bit of diversity in that sense. But overall, it wasn't quite the metropolis I was imagining. Now, I am a small town girl. I grew up in a small county in Virginia. So it's not like I was really looking to move to a giant hub. I found it very overwhelming to be in a giant hub. But I did expect to see maybe a bit more diversity in that sense. And I did notice a lot of gentrification that had pushed out people that were originally there. And although it looked nice, it was very beautiful, well developed, I do have a problem with cities that overprice themselves so the original tenants can no longer live there. Boston is a very expensive city to live in. It's astronomically expensive. And a lot of that just has to do with demand and desire to live there. The job market is secure. It's a good place to go to school. There's so many colleges and universities in Boston, so it makes sense that everything was built up the way it was, but it is still a problem for me to see where people have been pushed out from their homes because they can no longer afford it. And not because of them not having jobs. It's because of the way that the society has shifted, and now they're pricing themselves out of the regular average range. So although I thought it was a very beautiful city, that was something that did concern me, because as a student, I'm going to be living pretty much off student loans the first year. And I need to know if I can afford to live here. Like I said, financing law school is not just tuition, it's your cost of living. So that's rent, that's food budget, that's transportation. If you have a pet, it's vet bills for yourself. If you need to go to the doctor, if you want to eat out anytime, any type of excursions you want to do. So that's really important for me to see, that is, how expensive is it to just live here? Not scraping by, just living hand to mouth, but can I live comfortably here? And the answer was probably, if I'm very smart with my money, which was not a deterrent for me. It's just something that I really needed to consider, especially with, you know, being on my own, being in a city very far from all the rest of my family. So that was just a couple of the factors that I was thinking about. As for the rest of the city, I enjoyed it very much. I really liked that there were so many young people around. I really liked that there were so many universities, because that means there's people coming from all over. You can meet so many interesting people, make great connections, and there's no shortage of fun things to do. Their green space was a little strange because it's all centered around this giant park. But I can see maybe when we're not in a pandemic that could be a great meeting space, a great place to just lay out on the lawn and enjoy the beautiful weather. Unfortunately, my mother was in a boot, so she couldn't walk around, so we didn't walk around in the city very much. I would have liked to actually go through and like walk and really see the neighborhoods, because there's only so much you can see and do from the car. However, I do feel like I got a pretty good idea of, you know, what Boston is about and what area I would be able to live in. Now moving back to UIC, so I had been to Chicago one time, and that was in the summer of 2020 to move my sister there, because as I mentioned, she also goes to UIC. Now that was not a very enjoyable trip for me. First reason is, moving is always incredibly stressful. I don't care if you're moving across the country, to a different country, down the street. It is never fun. It is so stressful. There's so much work to do. It's not a good time. Second reason was, it was a crazy long drive and I get car sick very quickly, very easily. And I was asleep for most of it, and it was just, I would wake up, like I would sleep and I would wake up, and we were still driving. Like there was just corn everywhere. Like I did not enjoy traveling there. And then when we got there, like I said, it was July 2020, so there was still a pandemic going on, and at the time we didn't know too much about it, and they were saying only essential travel, and we were trying our best to, you know, remain separate from other people just to help her move in. But like there were so many people out and about acting like there wasn't a deadly, incurable disease rampaging through our entire country and like the rest of the world. And it was very anxiety inducing for me, because there were all these crowds of people and like they're all getting way too close. And then our hotel had like a nightclub attached to it because it was right downtown, and then it was so loud because like we were right downtown and there was always different action going on. It was a lot of stimulus for me, and I was overwhelmed But the moment we stepped foot in the city, I was completely overwhelmed by all the sights and the sounds and the smells and the people. And like I said, I'm kind of from a smaller town in Virginia, so this was a big change for me. It's not like DC. It's not like DC that was, you know, familiar to me. It's not like Richmond that's familiar to me. It's just like a whole different ballgame. And yes, I have been to large cities like New York before. I've been to New York many times, and I felt the same way there. But this was different. This was a lot of anxiety for me because not only was it the pandemic, but there were a lot of protests going on at the moment. And as we saw, a lot of law enforcement agents and groups, they were really out of pocket, just arresting people, beating people, putting them in unmarked vans. Like, there was a lot going on at the time, and I was not comfortable being there. Now, that being said, we did try to make the best of the situation. We went down by the Great Lakes and Lakeshore Drive. We saw the Bean. We went to, what was it? U Chicago, the school that looks like Hogwarts. It was a very beautiful campus. We couldn't do too much because the pandemic was at its highest at that moment, but we did go around the city. We had some great pizza. It was delicious. So I would say the trip, like, out of 10, it was like a 5 out of 10. Meaning I wasn't sure that I would enjoy living there, but I would go again for maybe a different time for a different trip. Now fast forward just about a year, about a couple weeks ago, once I got my acceptance from UIC, I decided it would be better for me to go out on a plane this time and get a second opinion of the city, because as I've been mentioning, there were a lot of outside factors that made it very unenjoyable for me to be in the city. And I figured if they're gonna offer me a 50% scholarship, and I need to actually consider this school, especially since it's the highest out of the 2 schools that I'm considering. So I got on a plane very safely, double masked up. I had my COVID test to make sure that I wasn't unwell, hand sanitizer, wiped everything down. A very safe flight. And I went to stay with my sister for a couple of days. And when I tell you this trip completely changed my perception of Chicago, I mean it. First of all, getting there, although it cost me more in terms of like having to buy the ticket, it was just so easy to get there, get in a lift, and just go straight to where I'm supposed to be. I didn't have to fuss about tolls or driving 13 hours or like where am I gonna get gas. Like, it was just so easy, point A to point B. That took off problem number 1. Problem number 2 was being overstimulated with everything that was going on. But when I was hanging out with my sister, it was almost a sneak peek of what my life would look like if I went to UIC. Because I wouldn't be living downtown on a student budget. There's no way I could afford that. So I would be living like a little further out like she was, and I would be doing my homework as I was doing at her place. I would be watching movies with my sister. We could go out for dinner. It was almost like we were playing pretend like I already went to UIC, which was really beneficial for me to see and to play pretend and put myself in a situation that is very similar to what I would be experiencing. So I guess it was like we were role-playing that I was already accepted. So that was another plus for me. It's just to see what my day-to-day life would be like as a student in Chicago. So that ticked off another problem that I had before. And then the third problem, well, not a problem, but the third thing was we actually had a tour in UIC. Before I went out there, the college, they sent out an email saying if anybody wanted to come, we could do individualized tours with small groups if you can come down to the campus. So my sister and I, we went out, we went down to the UIC campus, and did a personalized tour with one of the admissions office employees, who was actually a previous student. She just recently graduated 2 years before, and she had her Juris Doctorate from the school, and now she worked there. So she was a perfect source of information. The tour was incredible. She knew just about everything that I asked her. We went around through the building, we talked to security, and it made me feel safe in a way, because if I'm gonna be living by myself in the city, like I was scared, like if I was staying late, if I would be able to make it to my train, or if security could escort me, or is this a public library? Can anybody come in, or is it just restricted to law students? So there were a lot of questions that I had that weren't necessarily answered on the website, but it was incredibly beneficial to go down and actually see the area, walk around, and just become familiar with the area. I don't think being there one time for about 2 hours is enough to consider myself familiar, but just to see that it's not as scary as I thought it was. We even went on the L, which is their metro. It's elevated, so that's why they call it the L. And we went around in the loop and we just had a good time. She even showed me where she's going to be moving this next year. And I thought, wow, she's going to be living so close to my school. Well, not so close, but she's going to be living kind of nearby. Maybe I could find a place nearby because we're going to have like a similar budget. It was giving me a lot of hope that maybe this move could be good for me. And you know, for those few days that I was there, we walked around a lot, we toured a lot, and it was just good to see my sister right away, because you know, she's been there for a long time. She missed Thanksgiving and Christmas because of the pandemic, so it was just nice to be there anyway. So once I got back, that left me with the major question of which school am I going to choose? And they were both very strong contenders. It was an impossible decision for me. And as the deadline was April 15th, I made my decision on April 13th. So I was really up to the wire at this point. I even called both schools just to talk to somebody. I've been emailing left and right just to make sure that this is a decision that I've weighed carefully and that I'm going to make the best choice for me and what I want in the future. So the decision process was coming down to about 3 or 4 things. Number one, of course, being the program. Does this school offer the program that I'm looking for the career that I want to do? And if you're wondering, yes, they both do. I'm right now double majoring in political science and in international studies. So I was looking for a program that could be like human rights law, immigration law, international business law, or just regular international law. That's just something that I feel like could be generally applicable to everything that I'm seeing, as well as having the human rights aspect to stand up for people here within the United States. I was also looking for something that could make me money. So like international business law is a great option. International law just as itself is a great option, as well as like wills, trusts, and estates, real estate planning, things like that. I was looking for a program that can offer me a lot of certificates and a lot of experience and a lot of different categories of the law. So both of them offer those programs, and both of them offer a lot of different clinics that can offer me real life experience. Think of it like in Legally Blonde, when she was able to argue her court case with the supervision of a licensed attorney. It's the same way. So in those clinics, I will actually be having real life clients and real life cases, and I can get real world experience even though I'm still in school. And both schools offer that, which is phenomenal. So that kind of ticked off the first one. The second one was if I could afford it. So the important thing to realize is both scholarships were equal and the cost of attendance were equal. However, Chicago's cost of living is a little cheaper because the city is much larger, and I can afford to get a little further away from city center. So that was kind of up in the air. They were both comparable, but I do think Chicago was a little bit more affordable. However, there's a catch. With the scholarship, only the top 50% of the class can keep it. So that means if I decided to go to UIC, I would have to continue to be at the top 50% of my class to even keep my scholarship, let alone be considered for any more scholarship. But in New England, the scholarship is guaranteed as long as I'm in good academic standing. So that was a problem for me. I am not a gambler. Not when it comes to things like this. I was incredibly worried. I was like, well, what if I need help adjusting to living in a new city, or the workload, or the expectations of the class? Like, it was a very big problem for me. I couldn't even put my mind around, like, if I lose this scholarship, I cannot afford to go to school here. I can't afford to live here if I lose this scholarship. Like, this is not even a question for me. There's no way. But when I called the financial aid office, the woman I spoke to, she explained that the GPA requirement to be in the top half of the class was maybe a 3.0, maybe a 3.3. She didn't know at the top of her head, but it did seem doable to me, especially seeing my track record of being pretty well disciplined academically and having a lot of motivation to get my work done. But that was probably the biggest deciding factor for me, if I would be willing to take the gamble that I could potentially lose my scholarship because I wasn't in the top half of the class. So that was a big thing that I grappled over until the very last second that I submitted my deposit. Was, can I handle the pressure and the stress of maybe not being able to afford the school? Or should I just go for stability and just being able to do the best I can, and knowing that as long as I'm in good academic standing, I still have this to help support me throughout my law school career. So that was probably the biggest sticking point, was back down to the financials, because like I said, they're both very comparable. And the third thing that I was looking for was, of course, a diverse and lively student life. That was something that was, ooh, my camera's about to die. Hold on, let me get the charger. Hold on. Okay, there we go. So back to where I was. So the scholarship thing was a big deal for me. I was completely floored, thinking, oh my god, like, I could lose this. I don't know if I can afford this. So that was the portion that I spent the most time deliberating. And then finally, I was really looking for opportunities to study abroad. So I already went abroad in 2019. I studied abroad in Europe, England to be exact. They're still technically part of Europe, I guess. They haven't left the EU yet, but at the time of this video, England is part of Europe for right now. So I was looking for another opportunity to go abroad, especially if I was studying human rights law, immigration law, or international business or international law. So all of those things, I would want firsthand experience working in a firm or studying different perspectives of that. And I do not want to go back to Europe. I've already been there. If I'm going to be studying human rights or immigration, I would like to be studying in a place that feels the effects of heavy immigration. That means probably Mexico or the southern US border, or even in northern Africa or the Mediterranean area, which I guess you could consider Europe, but some parts of it are part of the Middle East as well, with the massive amounts of migration there. If I was going to study international business law, I would want to go to East Asia because they have the largest economy and they have the largest growing economy as well. Or even in Latin America. There's a truck outside, it's so loud. But even in Latin America, they have a large growing economy in the emerging market. So I don't want to have another Eurocentric view of the rest of the world. I want to experience everything else. And both schools did not really have what I was looking for. New England had more programs. They had 7 programs, but only 1 was in Latin America and the rest were in Europe. And I think maybe 1 was in Australia, but I do recall not seeing the variety I was looking for. And then UIC only had 3. Now, UIC is partnered, well, let me rephrase that. John Marshall Law School was recently acquired by UIC. So UIC does have relationships with other universities. And I looked at UIC, just specifically the undergraduate colleges, and they do have relationships with other schools, way more programs, and they do have legal options, like for legal studies. Now, for New England, they did not have it. They are a separate school. They are not affiliated with an undergraduate university or any other university as itself, but they did have more programs just enlisted with the school. One thing that I did learn in my research is that the American Bar Association will allow any law student to take a study abroad course or any other course from any accredited university for law. So if I wanted to go to either school and I didn't see a region or a program that I was interested in, I could just go to another school and enroll in that program there. So even though I was really looking forward to study abroad, it didn't really come down to that, just because there's still that external option for me no matter which school I go to. So that did put me at ease, which made me circle back to the financial aid issue. So to end up resolving this, I called my dad. He had stayed relatively very neutral about which school he would prefer that I went to. You know, my mom, I love her, but she was really pushing me to go to UIC. She kept like talking to me about it even when we were in Boston, and I was like, please just let me focus on being here and, you know, enjoying the moment and learning what I can about the city. She would bring up UIC. My boyfriend came to visit me, bring up UIC, and she asked him to convince me to go to UIC. She asked my sister to convince me to go to UIC. She would just keep badgering me about UIC. So in my mind, I still had this doubt that was like, do I even like UIC, or was I just pushing influence to like going there? Was this really what I wanted, or am I just filling out what my mom wanted me to do? And I called my dad and I was like, I don't know if I can go through with this because I'm not a gambler. I don't want to lose this scholarship because, as I said, I cannot afford law school without it. And you know, I talked him through my thought process of weighing both schools and why it was taking me so long, and what I had learned from talking and emailing both of the admissions offices. And he told me that it's not really gambling because I know myself and I know my track record. And he's like, it's kind of a gamble, but I'm betting on myself. And I'm betting on myself because I know what I can do. And, you know, nobody that's entering this law school is any smarter than I am. We're all going to the same school. So there's no reason why I should believe that I couldn't be in the top 50%. There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to keep my scholarship, especially when I've proven time and time again that I have self-discipline and motivation to get all my work done. But he told me that if this was going to be a stressor, that if it was going to impede me from doing my work at the best ability that I could, it was not the school for me. And that if it was really going to cause me a lot of anxiety, that I should go to New England. He was saying that my mental health and physical health comes before having a larger scholarship. And then he was like, it's your decision to make, like whatever you want to do, that's how I feel. So basically, to summarize what he said, is like, I believe that you can do it. You've shown me time and time again that you are a good student, you are diligent, you are well disciplined, motivated, you could do this. But he also acknowledged the security that New England offered me, especially when transitioning to such a new concept, a new environment of being in law school. So he validated how I was feeling, and he really did not push me to go anywhere. It was just a completely blank slate to bounce off my ideas of, and I was really grateful for that because I was running myself ragged, going in circles for hours, and in the end, I decided that he was right, and I am betting on myself. So I decided that I would be going to the University of Illinois Chicago John Marshall Law School in the fall. Having my sister there, she didn't want to be a factor of the city, but she is. It just is what it is. Like, just having someone there that can support me and be there for me and help me to adjust was monumental in making that decision. You know, having someone really reassure that I can do this meant a lot to me. And like, of course the school was great, I liked the area, I had a great time in the city, but that's really what it boiled down to. So I guess that's it. That's just me revealing which law school I'm going to and why, and how hard it was for me to make this decision. In the future, I am going to make more videos about the law school admissions process. I'm going to talk about having a low LSAT score and what you can do to raise it. I'm going to talk about what the application process is like, how you should study for the LSAT, things that I've learned that I wish I could have done better. And I'm going to continue to document this big change in my life. Like, this is just me going to just turning a corner, turning over a new leaf, just taking that next step into my adult life. And I'm so nervous. Like, that was the first time I said it like out loud, like I'm going to UIC John Marshall. And yeah, it kind of feels good to say it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'm sure this was kind of a long video, but I had a lot to think about. So hopefully this helps you if you're thinking between two options of school or study or whatever you want to do. Hopefully this helps you to categorize your thoughts and find a logical way of thinking that can help declutter your mind and make everything make sense to you. So, well, okay. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.